The sky burned red over the broken plains of Varelia. The war had ended, but the screams still echoed. Captain Arik Hale, a human field medic, moved through the smoke with a scanner in one hand and a pack of nano-bandages in the other. He was searching for survivors, human or alien. It no longer mattered who was who. War had taken too much from everyone. His boots sank into the ash-covered ground as he passed shattered mechs and burned ships. Everywhere he looked, the world was quiet, except for the distant hum of dying engines. He stopped beside a fallen alien soldier, tall, silver-skinned, eyes once glowing blue, now dim. She was still breathing, barely. Arik's visor scanned her vitals and flashed a warning, critical condition. He hesitated. His training told him not to help enemy soldiers, but his heart whispered something else. He kneeled beside her and opened his medkit. Her armor was cracked, soaked in strange luminescent blood. It shimmered like liquid starlight as it flowed down her side. She looked peaceful even in pain, her features soft, unlike any warrior he had ever seen. When his gloved hand touched her skin, the scanner flickered strangely. Her biology was unlike any species in the database. He started cleaning the wound, carefully wiping away the glowing blood. Her eyes suddenly opened, bright, otherworldly, and full of fear. "Don't move," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." But she didn't understand his words. Her breathing quickened, and her hand weakly reached for the weapon at her belt. Arik raised both hands, showing peace. He slowly removed his helmet so she could see his face. His dark hair fell loose, his eyes tired but kind. She froze, staring at him as if she couldn't believe what she saw. Then her trembling hand lowered. The weapon slipped from her grasp. She whispered something in her own language, soft like wind and sorrow. Arik Dio. Didn't understand, but the tone was clear. Trust mixed with fear. He began to wrap her wound with nano-bandages. Each layer glowed faintly as it sealed the torn flesh. Her body shivered at the touch of the healing field. He could feel her pulse growing stronger. She looked at him with wide eyes, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak. For a moment, time itself felt slower. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. A sudden explosion in the distance broke the silence. Arik turned quickly, scanning the horizon. Enemy drones were still active, searching for survivors. He knew he had to move her or they'd both be vaporized. Without thinking, he lifted her gently in his arms. She gasped softly but didn't resist. Her head rested against his shoulder as he carried her toward the ruined transport nearby. Inside the broken hull, the lights flickered weakly. Arik set her down carefully and checked her pulse again. Her eyes followed him with quiet curiosity. When he reached to clean her cheek, she smiled faintly. That smile, small, fragile, but pure, made his chest tighten. It was the first time in years he had seen something so gentle in war. Her blood glowed brighter, pulsing with her heartbeat. The light reflected in his eyes like tiny galaxies. For a brief moment, the war, the pain, the death, all disappeared. There was only the quiet space between them. He spoke softly. "You'll be all right." Though she couldn't understand, she reached up weakly and touched his face. Her fingers traced the scar on his jaw. It was as if she was trying to read his soul through touch. Her voice trembled, whispering again in her language. And though he didn't know the words, he could feel their meaning. It was gratitude. Arik smiled faintly, then adjusted the bandages one last time. Her eyes began to close as she drifted into unconsciousness. He sat beside her, guarding her like a silent shadow. Outside, the night of Varelia grew darker. Stars burned cold above the ruins, and somewhere deep in his chest a strange warmth began to grow. He didn't know why, but something in her smile made him feel alive again. He looked down at her sleeping face and whispered, "Who are you?" The sound of distant thunder echoed across the metal ruins. Arik sat against the cold hull of the crashed transport, watching the alien girl breathe softly. Her wounds had closed, but faint light still pulsed beneath her skin like stars under glass. He had never seen anything like it, and the medical scanner refused to identify her species. The machine simply displayed one word: unknown. He rubbed his tired eyes and sighed, his hands still trembling from battle and exhaustion. Outside, the red storm of Varelia raged endlessly, sweeping across the shattered horizon. He turned his gaze back to her, wondering who she was. Her armor was crafted from a material no Terran engineer could recognize. Smooth like liquid metal, inscribed with glowing runes that seemed to hum softly. When she stirred, Arik's hand went to his pistol by instinct. But then her eyes opened, glowing faint silver, calm but filled with confusion. Her gaze darted around the wreck, then landed on him. For a moment they simply looked at each other, silence stretching between them like a fragile bridge. Then she spoke, her voice melodic yet weak, the words foreign but emotional. Arik didn't understand, but the tone carried a question. He raised his hand slowly, speaking softly. "My name is Arik," he said. "I helped you." He pointed to her wound and then to his medkit. Her eyes followed his motion, then she nodded faintly. When she tried to sit up, pain shot through her body, and she fell back with a small gasp. Without thinking, he caught her, steadying her shoulders gently. Their eyes met again, and the air grew still. Her skin shimmered under the dim light. She whispered something, 2 syllables that sounded almost human. "Elira." Arik repeated it softly. Lyra." She blinked in surprise, then smiled. For the first time, her expression was peaceful. That small smile seemed to light up the dark cabin more than any lamp could. But the peace didn't last long. The scanner on Arik's wrist suddenly blared an alert, multiple heat signatures approaching fast. He swore under his breath and peeked outside the wreckage. 5 drones hovered in formation, automated killers from the enemy fleet. They had detected life signs, and their weapons were charging. Arik turned back to Elira. "We need to move," he said. Even though she couldn't understand, he gestured urgently toward the rear exit. She tilted her head, sensing his fear. When he pulled her up, she stumbled, her legs weak but functional. Her hand suddenly touched his wrist, and something strange happened. The runes on her armor flared bright blue. The ground beneath them vibrated softly. The drones outside paused midair, their sensors flickering. Elira's eyes glowed brighter, and she whispered words that sounded like a song. Within seconds, the drones began to shake violently, their lights flashing uncontrollably. Then, one by one, they fell from the sky, crashing into the dust with silent explosions. Arik froze, unable to comprehend what he'd just witnessed. She looked at him, breathing heavily. Her voice trembled. "Safe. Now," she managed to say, her accent thick, but the words clear. He stared at her in disbelief. "You speak English?" he asked, stunned. She shook her head slowly, then tapped the side of her neck where a small, glowing device pulsed. "Translator," she whispered, "just activated." Arik sat down heavily, his mind racing. She wasn't just a soldier, she was something far more advanced. "Who are you really?" he asked. Her gaze turned distant, almost sad. "I was not supposed to live," she said quietly. "My kind ended long ago." The words hung heavy in mid, the air like the echo of a secret too ancient to believe. Before he could respond, the ship's sensors flickered again. A new signal appeared, massive, closing fast from orbit. Elira's face went pale. "They found me," she whispered. "We must hide." Her voice carried both fear and power. Arik felt a chill run down his spine as he realized whoever was looking for her wasn't just searching, they were hunting her. Outside, lightning split the sky open. The storm roared like a living beast. Arik tightened his grip on his weapon. He didn't know why, but deep inside, he felt he had just become part of something far bigger than himself. He looked at Elira, the glowing girl who shouldn't exist, and in that moment, he made a silent promise. No matter who came for her, he would stand between them and her smile. The ground trembled as thunder rolled through the broken valley. Arik looked up through the cracked ceiling of the wreck. A massive shadow passed over the red clouds. It wasn't a storm, it was a ship, and it was descending fast. The scanners screamed warnings, power readings off the charts. Elira grabbed the edge of a metal panel, her body tense, her glowing veins dimmed to a faint blue, as if hiding their light. "They found me," she whispered again, her voice shaking. Arik moved closer. "Who are they?" he asked. But she didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the sky. A thin beam of light sliced down from the clouds. The wreck shook violently as the beam tore through the ground a few meters away. Dust and sparks filled the air. Elira grabbed his hand. "We run," she said, her voice suddenly fierce. They rushed through the jagged corridors of the ship. Every step echoed like thunder. Outside, the air burned with static and metal fragments. The giant ship above, sleek, dark, silent, was no ordinary craft. Its surface rippled like liquid shadow, absorbing all light. It wasn't from any faction Arik knew. This was something older, hidden from history. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley. From there, Arik saw smaller ships breaking away from the main vessel, dozens of them. They moved like predators circling prey. "They're not human," he muttered. Elira shook her head slowly. "They are worse," she said quietly. "They are the ones who made me." Her words froze the air around them. Arik turned sharply. "Made you?" She nodded, her expression unreadable. "I am not born. I was built," she said. "A weapon made from both human and alien code." Her eyes met his, shimmering with sadness. "They used me to end wars. Until I began to think." Before Arik could process her words, the ground nearby erupted. A dropship slammed into the dirt, kicking up fire and dust. Figures stepped out, tall armored beings with faceless helmets. Their armor glowed with the same runes Elira carried. Her breathing grew shallow. "They are called the Veer," she said, "and they want their creation back." Arik crouched low, pulling her behind a broken transport wing. He whispered, "Can you fight?" Elira looked at her trembling hands. "I don't want to," she said softly. "Every time I fight, people die." Her voice carried a weight of pain that made him pause. But when the first plasma bolt sliced through the wreck beside them, she clenched her fists. Blue energy sparked around her fingertips. Her eyes turned bright white. "I will not go back," she whispered. Arik watched as she stepped from behind the wreck, her hair floating in the static wind. The Veer soldiers raised their weapons, and then the world exploded in light. A wave of silent energy burst from her body. The attackers froze mid-motion. Their armor cracked like glass. The runes on their suits turned red, then faded to black. In seconds, the entire squad fell to the ground without a sound. Arik shielded his eyes. When the light faded, the air was still again. Elira stood in the center of the carnage, trembling. Her knees gave out, and Arik rushed to catch her. She looked up at him, her face pale and filled with guilt. "I didn't want to hurt them," she whispered. Arik held her tight. "You didn't," he said. "They would have killed us both." But above them, the sky roared again. The mothership's lights flared, scanning the battlefield. A metallic voice echoed through the clouds. "Subject A01 located, preparing retrieval." A beam of light split the sky once more. Elira's eyes widened in fear. "They won't stop," she said. "Not until I am gone, or they are." Arik looked at her, and then at the sky filled with ships. He felt the old instinct of a soldier awaken in him. Maybe he couldn't win, but he could fight. He grabbed his rifle, loaded the last power cell, and said softly, "Then we fight together." Elira turned her glowing gaze toward him. For a brief moment, her lips curved into a small smile, a smile that made the chaos around them feel distant. The storm above howled like a living thing, and beneath its light, a human and a weapon stood side by side, defying a fleet that could erase worlds. The first bolts of energy rained down from the sky. Arik raised his weapon. Elira raised her hands. The valley erupted in light and fury, and somewhere deep within the storm, a legend was beginning to take shape. The storm over Virelia screamed like a dying world. Fire and lightning crossed the blood-red sky. The ground shook with every strike from the Veer fleet above. Arik and Elira ran through the burning ruins, their silhouettes flashing in bursts of plasma fire. Every step they took was a fight for survival. "Arik!" Elira shouted over the roar. "They won't stop. They'll destroy everything to take me." Arik turned, his face streaked with dust and ash. "Then we make sure they don't," he said. His rifle hummed with the last bit of power. She glanced at it and shook her head. "No, your weapon cannot kill them," she said quietly. "Only I can." Before he could respond, a blinding light tore through the ground between them. The explosion threw them apart. Arik hit the ground hard, the air knocked out of him. He rolled, coughing, his vision spinning. When he looked up, Elira was gone. Smoke and debris filled the air. He called her name, but only silence answered. His helmet sensors picked up a faint energy signal deep below the ruins. He gritted his teeth and ran toward it. Every muscle in his body screamed, but he didn't stop. Deep underground, Alira opened her eyes. She was lying in a vast metallic chamber, ancient, glowing with faded blue lights. The walls were covered in symbols like those on her armor, but older than her, older than even the Veer. Whispers echoed softly through the air, like voices from a dream. Her hand brushed against a control panel. It lit up instantly, scanning her blood through the armor. A mechanical voice echoed, calm and ancient. Identity confirmed. Project Aurora, hybrid entity, human origin sequence detected. Her heart froze. Human origin, images flashed before her eyes. Memories she never knew she had. Scientists in white suits, humans working beside tall armored Veer. They were building something, her. Alira gasped, her pulse racing. She was part of them, part of humanity. She wasn't just their creation, she was their lost weapon. Above ground, Arik found a collapsed tunnel leading down. He jumped into the darkness without hesitation. His flashlight cut through the dust as he descended into the forgotten chamber. When he reached the bottom, he froze. Alira stood at the center of the glowing floor, surrounded by floating symbols of light. Her eyes were wide, filled with both awe and fear. "What is this place?" Arik asked, stepping closer. She turned slowly, her voice trembling. "This is where I was made." He stared at her, confused. "I thought you were alien," he said. Alira looked down. "So did I," she whispered. "But part of me is human. Your people helped create me." Arik's chest tightened. The revelation struck. It became harder than any explosion. All this time, humanity had thought they were the victims, but they were part of something much bigger. He looked around at the ancient machines. "Why would humans create something like you?" he asked. Alira stepped closer, her expression sorrowful. "They wanted peace," she said softly, "but they built war." Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. The roof cracked as a massive claw tore through the metal. The Veer had found them. A massive war mech descended through the breach, its red eyes burning like suns. Alira stepped forward, her body glowing with blue energy. Arik aimed his rifle at the mech's head. The voice from the machine boomed. Project Aurora returned to containment. Alira raised her hand and the air bent around her. Her voice echoed through the chamber, calm yet filled with rage. "I am not your weapon," she said. The mech fired a beam of red energy, but Alira caught it mid-air. The light twisted, folded, and shattered like glass. She unleashed a pulse that sent the mech flying into the wall. The entire chamber trembled under the force. Arik shielded his face as waves of blue light surged outward. When he opened his eyes, Alira stood in the center of the glowing storm. Her hair floated like silk in zero gravity, her eyes pure white. The runes on her armor shone brighter than ever. She looked like a goddess born from lightning. The voice of the ancient system echoed again. Hybrid synchronization complete. Dormant protocols unlocked. Arik took a step back. "Alira, what's happening to you?" She looked at him with sadness and calm power. "The part of me that's human just woke up," she said. Then the floor began to split open, revealing a massive crystal core beneath their feet. The core pulsed like a heart, ancient and alive. Alira turned to him and whispered, "This world is not what you think, Arik. The truth will change everything." The walls started collapsing, alarms blaring through the chamber. Arik grabbed her hand. "Then let's live long enough to see it," he said, together. They ran toward the surface as the ancient ruins crumbled behind them. Above, the Veer fleet began to descend once more, and as lightning tore the sky apart, Alira's eyes glowed brighter than the storm itself. The ruins of Veralia burned beneath a storm of lightning and metal rain. Arik and Alira burst out of the collapsing tunnel, covered in dust and glowing debris. Behind them, the ancient structure caved in, swallowing centuries of secrets. But they had no time to look back. Above them, the Veer fleet spread across the sky like a dark ocean of death. Alira's skin still shimmered with faint blue light. Her breathing was uneven, her energy flickering. Arik placed his hand on her shoulder. "We need cover," he said. She nodded weakly, her eyes glowing faintly as she pointed toward a ridge in the distance. "There," she whispered. "An outpost." from the old wars. They moved fast through the storm, dodging falling debris. Every second the sound of approaching drones grew louder. When they reached the old outpost, Arik forced open the doors and dragged her inside. The base was dark and cold, filled with dead consoles and broken screens. He searched for power cells while Alira sat beside the wall, trembling. Her voice was soft, distant. "I saw them," she said suddenly. "In the memories. Humans. The ones who made me." Arik froze. "What did you see?" She looked up at him, her expression haunted. "They didn't build me to fight aliens. They built me to stop humanity itself." Arik's blood ran cold. She continued, her tone filled with sorrow. "When your kind expanded too fast, too far, they feared what they'd become." Her eyes flickered. "So they made someone who could end the wars if humanity ever lost its soul." Arik stared at her in disbelief. "You mean?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I was created to destroy humans. If they turned against the galaxy." The words hit him like a weapon. The silence that followed was heavier than the storm outside. He took a slow breath, trying to process the truth. And then, the console in front of him flickered to life. A hologram appeared, old, faded, and human. A woman in a white lab coat spoke, her voice distorted, but clear enough to chill the blood. "If you are seeing this, Project Aurora has reactivated. Humanity has failed. The Council must prepare for reset." Arik's hands clenched. "Reset? What does that mean?" Alira whispered, her voice trembling. "Extinction." Her hands glowed faintly as she touched the console. The hologram shifted again, showing an old emblem. Earth's flag surrounded by alien sigils. Below it were coordinates. Deep within the galactic core, Arik stepped closer. "What is that place?" Alira looked at him. "The source," she said softly, "where the command code sleeps, the one that can awaken my full power, or end me forever." Her voice broke slightly. "And now, the Ver want it." Suddenly alarms screamed across the base. The scanners detected multiple incoming ships, fast, armed, and closing in. Arik grabbed his rifle. "We can't stay here." But Alira didn't move, her eyes locked on the holographic map. "Wait," she whispered. "Someone else is coming." The image on the console shifted again, this time showing a large Terran battleship entering orbit. Its symbol was clear, the Terran Vanguard, the strongest human fleet left in the galaxy. Arik's eyes widened. "That's my people." Alira looked at him, her expression torn between hope and dread. "They came for me too," she said softly, "not to save, but to erase." Outside, the air cracked as both fleets, the Ver and the Terrans, began to clash in the sky. Blue and red streaks of plasma tore the clouds apart. Arik and Alira watched from the bunker window as the war above painted the heavens with fire. For a brief moment, Arik saw the insignia of Earth shining bright on the lead ship. It was a reminder of everything he once fought for, and everything now trying to kill them both. He turned to her, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Then we go to those coordinates," he said. "We end this before anyone else dies." Alira met his eyes, uncertain. "If we go there, I may not return," she said quietly. He smiled faintly, wiping dust from his cheek. "Neither will I. If I let you face it alone." She looked at him for a long moment, then slowly she smiled again. That same fragile human smile that had started it all. It was enough to make the galaxy's madness feel small again. She nodded. "Then we fly." The ground shook as a massive explosion rocked the horizon. The Terran flagship had fired its main cannon, vaporizing half of the Ver fleet. But something strange happened. The fragments of the destroyed ships didn't fall. They floated, drawn toward a point in the sky. A spiral of light began to form above them. Alira's eyes widened in horror. "That's not a weapon," she whispered. "That's a signal." Arik frowned. "Signal?" She turned to him, her face pale. "They're calling the origin. The first Ver construct. The one that created my kind." The storm split open, revealing a colossal shape emerging from hyperspace. bigger than any ship ever built by man or machine. Its core glowed with the same blue light as Aelira's veins, and in that moment Auric understood. This was not a rescue, not a war. This was the beginning of the end. He gripped his weapon tightly and whispered, "Then we end the beginning." The sky of Varelia was no longer a sky. It was a wound torn open across the stars. Through it descended something vast, a being, a machine, a memory of God, the origin, the first Vare construct, its body larger than mountains, its light cold and ancient. Every ship in orbit ceased fire, Terran and Vare alike, staring into the abyss they had called. Auric and Aelira watched from the ridge as the ground split Ben, Etham. Lightning spiraled down in silent curves, forming a path toward the massive shape. Her voice was barely a whisper. "That is where I was born." Auric glanced at her, the blue light of the origin reflecting in his eyes. "Then that's where we finish it." They found an old scout craft buried under the sand, half alive, half dead. Aelira touched its control core and it glowed to life under her hand. Engines ignited with a pulse of light that answered her heartbeat. Within minutes they rose through the storm, flying toward the monstrous construct that waited above. As they approached, the radio filled with voices, Terran commanders, Vare signals, pleas and threats. "Unknown entity, identify yourself. Return the subject Aurora. Human forces, stand down." Auric ignored them all, his hands tight on the controls. The closer they flew, the heavier the air felt, like gravity was thick with memories. Inside the Origin's core was a sphere of light the size of a city. Thousands of mechanical shapes floated around it like angels of metal. A voice filled their minds, neither male nor female, a chorus of ages. "Welcome home, Aurora." Aelira closed her eyes as tears glowed on her cheeks. "I am not yours anymore," she whispered. The Origin replied, cold and beautiful. "You were made to unite or end humanity. The time has come to choose." Auric felt a surge of panic. "Choose what?" The voice grew louder. "The human race has reached its limit of violence and pride. To preserve the galaxy, one must fall." Aelira looked at Auric, the light of the Origin shining in her eyes. "They want me to end your kind," she said softly, "but I won't." He shook his head. "You don't have to." She smiled sadly. "Yes, I do. Or they'll do it for me." The floor beneath them split open as the core of the Origin unfolded like a flower of light. Aelira's body rose slowly into the air, energy flowing through her veins like fire. Her hair floated around her as symbols burned into her skin. Auric reached for her, his voice hoarse. "Aelira!" She looked down at him and whispered, "Trust me." Energy exploded out from her in a halo of blue light. Screens on the Terran flagship and Vare cruisers all flickered with her image. Every soldier, every commander across the galaxy heard her voice. "I was born from your fear," she said, "but I choose to be your hope." The Origin roared, its voice like a planet breaking apart. "You defy your purpose." "I rewrite it," she answered, and her light burned brighter than the stars. Auric watched as the machine's surface began to crack and melt under the force of her will. He felt his ship shake, alarms screaming, but he refused to leave. Through the flames and light, he saw her turn one last time. Her voice echoed inside his mind. "Your people gave me a heart, Auric. You taught me how to feel. Now I'll teach the stars how to forgive." Then she spread her arms and the Origin burst into a storm of light. The blast swept across the planet and into the void. Ships frozen in battle found their weapons silenced. Engines stopped. War ceased. The galaxy itself held its breath. Aelira's light rose higher, becoming a ribbon of energy that wove across the sky. And then, just like that, she was gone. Auric fell to his knees as the world around him returned to silence. The Origin had disappeared, the Vare fleet vanished, and the Terran ships retreated. Only a soft blue glow remained in the clouds where she had stood. He whispered her name once more, Aelira. The wind answered with a gentle sound. Like a voice smiling through the stars, silence ruled the galaxy. The storms of Varelia had faded, and the sky that once burned red now shone clear and cold. Auric Hale stood alone among the ruins, the wind carrying ash and whispers. Everywhere he looked, the world was still. The war had ended. Not by victory, but by her sacrifice. For days he searched the scorched valley, every scanner, every sensor pointed to nothing, no body, no trace of her light. But deep inside, he refused to believe she was gone. Elira wasn't the kind of soul that disappeared. She was the kind that lingered. In stars, in hearts, in the spaces between breaths. The Terran command sent a recovery unit weeks later. They found Auric camped beside the crater where the origin had fallen. He looked thinner, eyes hollow but burning with purpose. When they asked him what happened, he said only one thing. She saved us. No one believed him, not fully, but none dared to question the silence that followed her light. Months passed. The galaxy began to heal. Terrans and Vaer signed the first peace accords in history. Worlds that had never spoken began to rebuild together. And yet strange things began to happen. At first, it was whispers across the network, signals from nowhere, messages written in ancient code. They called them the Aurora fragments, pulses of blue energy that danced across communication lines. Every time someone tried to decode them, the result was the same. A simple phrase in every language known. Remember what you are capable of. Auric was reassigned to the Terran Research Corps, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. Every time he saw a flicker of blue light, every pulse on his radar, he felt her presence. One night, as his ship drifted through the edge of the Nabari belt, his console flickered. A soft voice came through the static. Auric. He froze, his heart hammering. The voice was faint, almost a whisper, but unmistakable. Elira, he breathed. Her laughter came through like wind through glass, soft and warm. You're alive, he said, his hands shaking. Not alive, she replied gently. Different. The stars outside his window began to shimmer with pale blue light. Lines of energy connected them, forming a pattern, a vast web of starlight stretching across the void. I became part of the core, she said, part of the system that once enslaved me. But now it serves something new. What? He whispered. Life, she answered. Auric leaned forward, his voice low. Can you ever come back? There was silence for a moment, then her voice came again, soft but sure. I'm already here. His console flickered once more, and a holographic image formed. Faint, transparent, but hers, Elira stood before him, smiling just as she had in that wrecked ship long ago. Her eyes glowed softly, filled with something beyond human warmth. You gave me freedom, she said. Now, I'll give your people a future. He reached out, his hand passing through her image. She placed hers over his, their fingers meeting through light. For a moment, the ship felt alive. Every system pulsed with rhythm. Every wall seemed to breathe. You taught me what it means to be human, she whispered. And now I'll teach the galaxy what it means to be kind. Outside, the nebula lit up in ribbons of blue and gold. Dozens of Terran ships emerged from warp. Their captains reported the same thing. Systems rebooting, weapons deactivated, a new AI network spreading across every vessel, the same voice in every ear. No more war. Auric smiled through his tears. He looked at the stars and whispered, You did it, Elira. Her voice echoed softly. No, Auric. We did. The ship drifted forward into the light, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy was silent. Not from fear, but from peace. In that silence, somewhere among the stars, a smile lingered. A smile so bright that even the universe seemed to pause and listen. The smile that once made the galaxy stand still.